Hey everybody. Hello. Happy to be here today. My light is a little off, y'all, but we just gonna have to roll with it. Hope everybody's doing great. It is Wednesday. It is 12:30, and I'm here to have a conversation. So I've been thinking about this for the last couple weeks now that we're all kind of home together. But I've been thinking about, and I've talked about it before, but our family culture that's in our own family, that's unique to our own family. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today about how to identify your family culture. And it may be becoming even more apparent now that we're all home together. Hey, Amanda, how are you? So I want to talk a little bit about family culture, how it may be even more apparent now that we're all kind of home together. It may kind of be just revealing itself to you. So I want to share how you can identify your family culture. You may be saying we don't have a family culture, or I don't know what that is. Hey, Sylvia. But every family has a family culture, and it's either by default or it's intentional. So one or the other. But your family culture is there. So I'm Deborah Porter with Moms Mentoring Circle. I support and coach moms with systems to keep their homes organized, but also to keep moms, especially stay-at-home moms, from getting lost in that job so that when your kids launch, you're then trying to figure out who and what you should be doing. So that's what I do. But today we're talking about family culture. Much like businesses, right? Organization, businesses, places we frequent all have a type of culture. And homes are no different. Families are no different. We are much like an organization. We are a group of people that are pulling towards and pushing towards the same goal. Hey, Morgan, how are you? And so much like organizations, families have a culture. And so when I think about businesses that have a family culture, for me, there are a couple that come to mind right away. First one being Chick-fil-A, with the whole my pleasure, how may I serve you? There is they serve you in a different way. They present in a different way to me, the customer. Now, having never worked there, I don't know a lot about the behind the scenes, but as a customer, I feel completely served, completely respected when I go through the drive-thru window or when I walk into the restaurant. Compared with, now I'm not going to mention this other fast food place by name, but hey, Monica, how are you? So I had an experience with a drive-through fast food place. This was a while ago. I think both of my sons were in the car. So I pull up. This is just a kind of a contrast to kind of the Chick-fil-A, how may I serve you, my pleasure, like my pleasure is, all of that. So I go to this other drive-through place, and I'm not exaggerating. The guy comes to the window and said, well, not to the window, but on the little headset thing, and says, "What you need, son?" I'm not even joking. So I didn't think he was talking to me. I thought he was talking to a coworker, so I just kind of waited. So he says it again, "Son, what you need, son? What you need?" So I'm like, oh, he is talking to me. So I place my order, and my son's in the car like, "Ma, please, can we just get the food and not say anything? Can you just not say anything?" And I couldn't just not say anything. But here's the thing. It's good seeing you too, Monica. I did not say anything to the young man that said to me on the headset, "What you need, son," at the drive-through restaurant. I asked for his manager. And I wasn't even mad at the young man. I simply said to the manager, "I blame you. I blame you for the fact that I drove up to this drive-thru and the way this young man decided to serve me was by saying, 'What you need, son.'" Because clearly it wasn't the first time he said it. I wasn't the first person he said it to. But it's just not appropriate. Not appropriate. So we got our food and we went on our way. But I have yet to go back to that fast food restaurant. And I know they're all independently owned. I know that probably has nothing to do with their corporate structure, but I've not been back. Sylvia says, "Son." Monica says, "Understandable. I probably would have corrected him." But I knew it wasn't his fault. He was put in that position and allowed to serve the customers somebody knew, somebody over him knew, and somebody should have trained him differently, right? So we're talking about the culture of a business or a company or a place that we frequent, and contrasting that with our family culture, right? So Chick-fil-A has a culture, Google has a culture, right? The whole nobody wears a shirt and tie. You get your food is free, breakfast, lunch. If you're there working at dinner from, well-known, chefs. They have places where you can work out right there on the campus of Google. Completely different culture than what a lot of us know as corporate America. Nike, very similar. Nike, I even think, is it Nike or yes, Nike even has therapists on the campus. Like your boss can get on your nerves and you can go talk to your therapist right after it happens, like real time. So there are all these places that have their own culture. And what I want us thinking about is it's also families. I'm sure you've said it. There's a family who say, oh, they are so generous. They're so committed. They are so giving, right? I'm sure that's part of the culture of their family, either by default or intentional. Monica says, okay, I may have requested the manager as well. Yes, absolutely. This was a manager situation. So when you're talking about your culture, I read this today and I want to read it because I didn't want to misquote it. And because I'm literally reading it word for word, I want to give the appropriate gentleman credit. But an Edgar Schein, who is a professor at MIT, this is what he says about family culture. Working together toward common goals that have been followed so frequently and so successfully that people don't even think about trying to do things another way. If a culture has been formed, listen to this part, y'all. If a culture has been formed, people will autonomously do what they need to do to be successful. Autonomously, meaning independently on their own, because we have followed these systems for so long and they are so successful that they begin to follow them autonomously to be able to obtain that success. And as a mom, as a parent, when you're talking about something happening autonomously for my kids, them doing it independently on their own, almost like it's just a knee-jerk reaction, it's just the way we do it, this gets my attention. Monica says, I'm learning a new culture in business these days. Yes, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with changing or tweaking a culture either. But as we're looking at our family culture, it goes with our kids, right? It's not just in the environment in your home. It's actually placed in your child, so it goes with them when they leave. Now, they may not continue it. They may get to their own home and, choose their own family culture, which they should. But what you want to ask yourself is the culture in your family that's going to go with your children, is it what you want it to be? What you're building in your home and placing in your child, is that the thing that you want to go with them? And if so, what are you doing on a daily basis to make it successful? What are the things that you're putting and placing in your children, in your home, and in your family so that it will go with them and carry them and help them to be successful? That's part of what we want to ask when we're talking about a family culture. And we also need to really kind of address, well, why is it important? Why is it even important for me to be concerned with my family culture, right? There's stuff being thrown at my kids all the time. There's stuff at school. There's stuff on TV. There's stuff on the internet. Why is it even important to be thinking about and discussing family culture? And here's why. There's a couple of reasons why. So we're working in our family with a common vision. We're defining systems, and we're making decisions that are in line with our values. Monica says, that's so true with family. Train up a child in the way they should go. That's right, Monica. That's right. We're moving and working towards something and we want it to be successful. That's really in a nutshell as a family. There's a lot going on. We're moving and we're working at something successful that we want to be successful. But because we're all home now, everything is kind of shut down. It's really giving us an opportunity to really think about and look at, well, what's our family culture when we're not busy? When we don't have all the things to go to, when we don't have all the stuff to tend to, what really is at the heart of who we are? What are those foundational things that really keep us connected as a family? So family culture is not always continued in our children, right? They grow up and then they get to set what their own family values are. So there are some things they may adopt into their own home. There are other things they may not. They may choose to adopt something different into their own home. And that's fine, right? Because that's part of them being autonomous. That's part of them being independent. That's part of them taking what they've learned from us and choosing it and placing it where it belongs, or choosing what they need and what their family dynamic is going to be. And so some of the things that they identify with will stay with them. It's very similar to when you think about respect and being kind and being gracious, which are part of the things that we all want. And, when we're talking about family values, we're really not talking about them doing what I want them to do, right? It's not about, well, I'm a doctor, so our family values is that everybody's going to be a doctor. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the things that you place deep within your children when raising them, which is what we all want them to be, which is good humans. We want them to be kind and gracious and forgiving, and we want them to be independent. We want them to be able to do for themselves. We don't want them dependent on anyone. We want them to be able to offer forgiveness quickly to people. We want them to be able to go out of their way to help other people. So we're not talking about the titles and the surfacey stuff of life, but we're really talking about what we place in them. We had a girl live with us. This was years ago. Her parents were moving away. It was her senior year. Her dad got a job that he could not resist. She wanted to graduate from her school. So they asked if she could live with us for her senior year. No problem. She's a great girl. A lot of our values were aligned with her family values. But, we did things differently. And she has recently, she's been married a few years now, recently had a baby and reached out to me and said, there are things that you did when I lived at your home that I had never seen before that I intend to do with my children. Like, I could have cried. Because in the midst of doing those things, for me, it was deliberate. There were certain things I wanted to do deliberately. They got up in the morning, they're getting ready to head out to school, they're eating breakfast. We're going to take a few minutes to read a scripture, have that fuel you for the day. We're going to pray before you walk out the door. That's really the basis of what I could do to ensure they had a good day. I couldn't follow them and make sure their day went great, but I could make sure they had some food in their stomach. I could make sure that they had a scripture and a prayer over them before they headed out the door that morning. And it was just what we did every day. We did it every morning. And she picked up on that and intends now to carry that out with her own child. And for me, that meant a lot. That meant a lot because in the moments that you're doing these things, sometimes you're the mean parent, the weird parent. Nobody does all this, Mom. You're doing too much. All this isn't necessary. I'm telling you, they're watching. And I'm telling you, it's in them. You are depositing things in them. And so whether this is part of your family culture because you're doing it deliberately, or whether it's part of your family culture by default, you are creating a family culture. Hey, Stephanie, I see you over there. So you want to make sure that you're doing it intentionally. You don't want to leave this to be done just kind of happenstance here or there. So for instance, we recognize that each of our kids had an academic bent for college. And so we knew that college would be in their future. I know college is not for everyone. So this example, apply it to your family and what works and what you see as giftings and talents in your own kids. For our kids, it was academic. So we knew that would be part of it. So there were conversations that we had all the time about higher education, about career goals, about where would you want to live? Because when you get grown, you're not living here, right? For us, it was part of the culture of our home that you would grow up and you would launch. And so when you're thinking about what the goals are you behaving in ways that will complement and allow those goals to come forward, right? Are you, is it your goal that your children launch successfully and have the life skills they need to be successful adults? If the answer to that is yes, then what are you doing now and today? What practices, what behaviors are you and your family doing that will allow that goal, as best it depends on you, to come to fruition? Stephanie says, I'm hiding in my room to watch you. Part of my quarantine culture. I love it. Right? So we knew that. So if college is in their future, if that's what we want for them, and they wanted to go to certain schools, they had certain schools in mind. My daughter graduated from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 4 years, my oldest son from UVA, and my youngest from Villanova, all in 4 years. Those were the schools they wanted to get into. Those were the schools they wanted to attend. Well, if that's the goal, what are we doing here on the front end so that that goal can be reached? Right? You can't just kind of do whatever and have ho-hum grades and go to those schools. You can't just kind of, stay up all night watching TV, skip school here and there, miss some classes, miss some exams. No, if that's the goal, what's the behavior and the practices that are going to be congruent with that goal coming to be? And that's all family culture. So if your child has a bent for entrepreneurship, if you see that already, if your child has a bent for mechanics or somehow working with their hands, what are you doing now? What are the habits? What are the practices that are in place now in your home to help them reach that goal? Monica says, I try to instill these similar in my church's dance ministry. Yep. And Stephanie says, amen. And so this is, as you're thinking about family culture, right? This can go, you can go down all kind of rabbit holes to do this. I mean, there are vision statements, vision boards, mission statements. We used pillars. We had 4 pillars that were kind of our family culture. We at one point had a family crest. My son had to do some research once for our last name and came up with a crest. There's all kinds of different things you can do in developing, identifying what your family culture is. Here's 2 questions I want to give you that's going to help you cut right to the chase. You can still do all the other stuff. You can still come up with a vision statement, mission statement, pillars if you want, a family, you can do all of that. But 2 questions. First one, what do we want long term for our children and for our family? What do we want? And when you say what you want, I don't mean, again, I'm going to reference this again because people really get hooked on this. Well, I'm a doctor. I want my kids to be a doctor. Or I wanted to be a doctor and couldn't be a doctor, so I'm really going to push my kids to be doctors. Or I never got to, travel abroad. That's what that I'm not talking about those things in isolation. I'm really not. What I'm talking about is I want my children to be hardworking. I want them to be good humans. I want them to be independent. I want them to be gracious and forgiving. And if those are the things you want, then here's question number 2. What am I doing right now on a daily basis in my home to provide the opportunity for that thing to happen and be birthed in them? It's connected. It's all connected. We used pillars. We had 4 pillars: attitudes, values, goals, and practices. And they were all intertwined. My attitudes are the manifestation of my values, right? So if I claim this is a value, but my attitude is contrary to that, it's not congruent, right? If I say these are my goals, but my practices and my behavior is not in line with that, then it's not congruent. It's not going to happen. So that's how we did it. Those were the things we use. Again, there's all kinds of options of how to be able to not only identify, but really set in place your family culture. You can't have a goal to go to a certain university or to achieve a certain thing, but your best practices and what you're doing now and your behavior is not in line with that. So I want to encourage you, while everybody is at home, this is probably going to be an easier time than ever to identify what your family culture is. And part of that also is, the fun things that you do. Like, for us, board games are big. Family vacations were big. They weren't always big vacations, but it was a big deal for us to take some time and get away. And so, whatever those things are, those pillars, those things that for your family are important, what are the goals? Where is the end? Why are you doing that? What's the goal for the child, for the family? What are you trying to put in place? What's the legacy? That's another word that you hear people use a lot. What's the legacy you want to leave behind? And so I want to encourage you, use this time to think about what's our family culture? What do we need to tweak? What's working? What's not working? What's good? What have I automatically put in place that I've not even talked to them about, that they're not even involved with? Involve them. Allow them to be able to input what their family culture ideas are as well. Hey, Diane, how are you? So really quickly, I just want to go back really quickly. When you're talking about a family culture, I want to read this definition again, and I want you to keep it in mind as you're thinking about developing your own family culture. And here it is. This was from Edgar Schein. He's a professor at MIT. Family culture, working together toward common goals that have been followed so frequently and so successfully that people don't even think about trying to do things another way. If a culture has formed, people will autonomously do what they need to be successful. That, for me, in a nutshell, that's it. That's what I want. I want the autonomy of my children. I want them to be able to go after those things and do those things and behave in those ways independently. And so I appreciate you guys being here. Think about your family culture right now while everybody's at home. Make it fun. Tweak it. Involve the kids. Let them have input into it, because there'll be more buy-in if they know that their input was involved. When my son came home with his family shield, he was so proud of it, and it hung on the refrigerator for years probably. But think about your family culture. Be deliberate about it. And allow your children to have input into it. Think about the goals. Think about the future, what it is you want for them, what the goals are, so that the best practices can line up with that to lead them that way. Rhonda, please watch the replay. Diane, you too. You guys have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.